All right, everybody, we're back with a special guest, obviously it's head coach of Grambling State women's basketball, Courtney Simmons. Obviously been off season again, finally get to work with your team over the summertime. How's the summer been going now?
The summer has been going well. I think the biggest thing for us is just trying to get to know each other. The biggest thing with trying to build chemistry is with having 8 new kids and 6 returners, just trying to make sure we figure out how to gel so that by the end of the summer they'll like each other a little bit, in hopes by the end of non-conference, they might love each other a little bit. So just trying to take progressions towards, those relationships and cultivating those relationships. So it's been good.
Yeah, obviously, you're always, active in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Maybe with a little more, support from the returners this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about last year, you had 10 transfers. 10 transfers again last year. Come back with 8 this year. So, this cycle seems to be like, you and Coach Perry got a battle for who has the most hype around when incoming transfers right now.
Yeah.
What has been the hype or the excitement about working with this team?
Well, I'm excited about my new kids, but I'm also encouraged by my returners. I think they've laid the foundation for what is to be expected in the program. With me coming into now my 3rd season, this is the first year that I've had returners. Really, last season was the most I had. Obviously, my first year I didn't have recruiting to those kids, but this past season I only had 4. This year I have 6. So those 6 kids know what I want, know what I expect, know what the expectations are in the program. So having the 8 new kids come in, I think they've been able to just kind of fall right into place, and we just kind of, we've been rolling. We got a lot of kids that have a lot of hype behind them prior to getting here, but they hadn't put on a Grambling uniform yet. And so the biggest thing is making sure that they're ready to represent the G on November 4th. That's our first game. So just making sure we locked in to taking steps to just be better every single day. We have a slogan, championships are won today. So they're in there working right now, trying to make sure we can win a championship today in hopes of winning one again tomorrow. So it's been going good.
Obviously, going to your 3rd year, you kind of broken the mold for how Grambling women's basketball has been viewed over the last decade. Your first year you won 23 games. Last year, pick number 1 to win the SWAC. Obviously, preseason doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
But do you think coming here into your 3rd season, the success would happen this fast?
I think the biggest thing for me is I didn't put any expectations on myself. I think I've been able to work under a lot of good head coaches that have prepared me for this moment. And so I didn't say, oh, in my first year I'm gonna do this, in my second year I'm gonna do this. I think those type of expectations for a first-time head coach are unrealistic, because what if it doesn't happen? Now you go from the highs of the highs to now the lows of the lows because it didn't happen in the time. I'm taking every year by year. Last year, we had back-to-back winning regular seasons. We were 15-14 going into the tournament. And although that wasn't the season that we had hoped for, it was what it was for last season. So this year, obviously, our goal is to always win a championship. But I'm just taking it as it comes. There's no handbook. Patricia Bibbs and Freddie Murray, both coaches who won championships here at Grambling, didn't leave me a little note card with keys to success on it. You just got to figure it out, and they were able to do something here before I even got here, and there are other coaches that were able to win before I got here, but I'm just trying to make my own mark and just take it year by year, honestly, day by day. So, no expectations, just, trying to be the best version of myself I can be every single day, so.
Obviously, talking about that, this new year, you bring a familiar face onto the staff this year. Somebody you're very familiar with, your old teammate, Coach Q.
Yeah.
And what she built at Southern Lab, was absolutely extraordinary. Just coming off the championship, well, beating one of our teams, Team 3.
Yeah.
What she built was, and like I said, was extraordinary. How do you convince her to say what I've built is great, but it's time to go to Grambling and build it with her?
I'll say this: when you are trying to, as a newer head coach, I'm still young in my profession as a head coach. I think the biggest thing for me is to find people that I know without a shadow of a doubt can do their job, right? And I think going into my 3rd year, I had to get a staff that I was going to be comfortable with before we even walked on the court. And I tried to get Coach Q on my staff last year, And she told me no, the timing wasn't right, it just wasn't gonna work. I think she really wanted one more championship or one more run at it. But I said this in another interview that I did. I don't hardly ever get told no twice. So a lot of these kids I have on my team this year told me no once before. And so I think me just being persistent and not giving her a chance to tell me no, she was kind of backed into a corner because I'm like, I'm putting a full court press on you. You know, I need you here and I want you here. And I think Grambling is going to be the best place for you to start your college career. And she told me yes. And honestly, she's hit the ground running. I feel comfortable with her because she was my backcourt mate. You know, we got it done when we were at Southern Lab. We won 2 championships together before she went on to win 1 without me after I graduated and went on to college. And then she turned around and come back to Southern Lab, your alma mater, and win 3. So you won 3 as a player, you won 3 as a coach. So having someone that has as much success and as many accolades as her, when you sit around winners, the conversation is just different. And so I wanted to have people on my staff that kind of bred that same type of winning mentality. A lot of people kind of smirk when we say championship talk, but those people don't really understand what championship talk really embodies. It's more than just X's and O's and winning basketball games. I want these kids to be champions in life. And what better way to get them to see it than having a walking, talking, living, breathing example of what a champion in life looks like, and that's Coach Q. So it's been great, man. It's been great. We having a good time. So.
Right, and also, you know, talking about that, you know, what she brings, you know, you both bring D1 level experience at a high level of competition. What was that present having it now, you and her now having that experience? What does that presence bring, you know, being that she's also one of the great Louisiana greats, you know, in this state playing for LSU, still holds records down there. What does that presence bring? How much of an impact does that have on her?
I think when I introduced her to the team, we did it via Zoom. And she was on the Zoom call, and I introduced her to the returners first, and I introduced her to them, and I started reading off all of her accolades. First, they were just kind of looking in the camera, you know, whatever, and then I started saying, and she was this, and a Naismith All-American, and blah 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 blah, and they were all like, now everybody's, because her past basically gives her the opportunity for her future to be as bright as she wants it to, just because of her accolades, right? So the team went from just listening to now they're intrigued, now they want to know more, now they're asking her questions. And so I think having somebody with that much experience, that much success, it's going to help us with recruiting, it's going to help us with relationships with the kids we currently have, and she has a personality, so that helps the whole situation. So yeah, man, it's been great. It's been great.
You know, going to your coaching journey a little bit, you know, obviously the 3rd year here. But going back to your first year, you obviously had 23 wins. You know, nobody really saw that coming from the first time they coached. But the most memorable one I would guess had to be the Arizona State game, where you take down, you know, Arizona State by 3. And, you know, nobody wants to say the elephant in the room, but HBCUs are not supposed to be able to beat schools like that. But lo and behold, you know, you do it your first year, beginning of the year at will. How did that feel? What was the most?
I think that was the turning point. That game was the reason why we were able to win 23 games. And I look at the fact that we had just gotten blown out. The game right before that, we played South Florida, and we got embarrassed because we were so worried about the name on the front of their jerseys. And I think going into that Arizona State game, the kids decided we don't care. They put their jerseys on just like us. They put their shorts on just like us, and they didn't care. And they came out with a mindset of, why not us? You know, why not Grambling? No, we're not scheduled to win this game, but what if we do, right? What if we do? And then I think once they saw that they could win the big games, then it just kept going. And I look at last year's season. I think when we were at Arizona and up at halftime at Arizona, if we would have found a way to win that game, we may have gone undefeated in conference. But we couldn't get over that hump in that particular game, being up against a Power 5 school. And so I think the same is going to be with this year's group. You know, if we can start the season off and maybe knock off one of those Power 5 teams, I think it just changes the trajectory of how you see your season. You know, I'll use Southern University for an example. They go out and they play Colorado, and they play them close all the way down to the wire. A few controversial calls at the end of the game that, you know, kind of caused them not to win, but they believed that they could do it, and they took that confidence on to go and play DePaul and take them down to the wire. They lose the game, but they're starting to build confidence, they're starting to build momentum, and it just took them right into league play. And I think that's been something I've studied every single game that they played last year, and just try to take, okay, what are they trying to get out of each one of these games? Although they lost every game in the non-conference when they played Division I Power 5 teams, but they've taken something away from each one of these games, and just trying to get my team now to kind of see the groundwork that's been laid in trying to beat some of those Power 5 teams. It's very, very possible, because I feel like the playing field is a little bit level with the amount of talent that we've had, other teams in the league have had, and we're competing. So, you know, we're trying to do it again this year. So,
kind of stand on that topic a little bit.
Yeah.
With, you had me. I would say you had me in the headlines a little bit last year, Coach.
Yeah.
You know, with the LSU game. It was, back in I think December of last year. You know, where you asked, how does this help, for your kids that play in the SWAC, that play, in the mid-major level, getting beat by LSU like that, and you were very outspoken, very honest about
I will always be.
Very outspoken about the reality of how HBCUs have to survive with, the money games. I guess the question is kind of, why are people in college athletics so reluctant to talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to the reality of what we call money games?
Yeah. I think you have to be careful with playing this many Power 5 games, because there's a thing called confidence, right? And losses like this can kill SWAC kids' confidence. I'm not as experienced as, let's say, Carlos Funches down there, at Southern. They're going to schedule, out of the 11 non-conference games, 10 of those games are going to be Power 5 conferences, and they're going to go give $40,000 a piece, but their kids are used to that. I'm the only team in the league that didn't go get other SWAC players. And so right now it's just a matter of not killing their confidence so that we're prepared for SWAC play and we don't lose our first 2 games in the league because we're so used to getting our butts kicked in the non-conference. So nothing about this prepares you for SWAC play. It sounds good to say, but these are money games. We play these games to get the money so we can survive in our league. That is it. That is all. It's not because I would rather not ever play LSU again, but they paid us good money to come here and take a loss. And so, yeah, unfortunately, with the dynamics and the situation that we're in financially, we have to play these type of games to just be able to survive, to be able to make it to our conference games. So, no, nobody is going to sit at a press conference and tell you these were moral victories. That's not real life. As much as Kim Mulkey is a competitor, as am I, right? I play high-level basketball. I played at the University of Louisville, which we'll play in a couple of days. I know what high-major basketball looks like, and nothing about that is saying that I want to go and play Grambling and just beat the snot out of them. That doesn't help them for league play, and us getting the snot beat out of us does not help us for league play. I don't know. I can't speak for why, because it was almost like people were shocked that we were getting paid to play them, which, I don't know, but that's how this works. And I stand by the statement that I made, that I don't think that if you're getting beat by, if you're already getting, like for instance, you brought up LSU, we were already getting beat by 30 points with 5 minutes left to go in the game, and then she subbed her starters back in, her big 3, Flage, Michaela, and Nisa Morrow, with 5 minutes left, and we're already up you're already up by 30. That's what I meant by those type of situations don't help us prepare for the SWAC, because now it's demoralizing, as opposed to when we play College of Biblical Studies and we beat them 159-18. My starters only played 13 to 15 minutes in that game, as opposed to her starters probably played 25, 30 minutes, right? And so I think just trying to find a balance. I use the Southern University games as an example because those are games that they weren't scheduled to win, but they found ways to compete. We probably were able to compete in that LSU game for maybe 14, 15 minutes of that game. So we're not actually, it's not coming down to the wire. By the time we get to the last stanza of the game, we're already down by 30-something, 40 points. And so I don't know why it's such a shock. I wish we didn't have to play as many guarantee games, but that is the reality. That's what we are. We need those games in order to survive. I think it comes down to scheduling those type of money games where you can compete with some of those teams. We couldn't compete with LSU last year. They go on to the Elite Eight or wherever they went last Final Four. I don't even know where they ended up, but they go on to play deep into March, and we're not competing with those teams with last year's group. But hopefully this year we can find some of those Power 5 teams where we can still get the money and compete a little bit. So that's kind of been the goal in the offseason this year. You know, when you're coming off of 23 wins, nobody wants to play you. You know, so now I'm playing LSU, Louisville, you know, all these big name schools, but you finished 15-15 in conference. Now people are calling us, hey, you want to play? You want to play? People that wouldn't play us last year are calling me now to play us this season because they don't see us as a threat now. And so they didn't see us as a threat my first year either. So hopefully we can, you know, surprise a couple of people and try to get a couple of these wins.
You know, how do you kind of prepare your players for games like that where you talk about, you know, where mid-majors, like, see, you have to find a way to survive.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times at the beginning of the year, you're falling behind the 8 ball because you have to play the Arizona, you have to play the Arizona States, the LSUs, and the Oregon States before you get to the people you're used to. How do you prepare your players to go on a gauntlet like that and then come back and say, well, we got to win the SWAC now?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me and the reason why I'm so adamant about trying to change how many guarantee games we have to play is because we can't recover. Like, that was my frustration at the LSU game last year with the way that we are able to, financially, we can't recover the same way LSU can. Flagey was walking around with her own trainer, right? Somebody that stretches her. She has a cryo chamber in the facility that we had the game in, the Brookshire Arena. Like, she has all of these things just so she can recover after the game. We don't have those things, right? We can't recover the same. You know, our ice machine doesn't even work right now. So, you know, we're having to go to the store and buy bags of ice for my kids to take ice baths. So my frustration is not necessarily that we can't always compete with those kids at that level. It's just we can't sustain because we can't recover the same. And so just trying to get my kids mentally prepared, because it is a gauntlet, it is a grind. You know, being on the road for 11 and 12 days at a time just because you're going from one city to the next without ever sleeping in your own bed, you know, that makes it difficult. So just trying to put them through difficult right now so that when we hit difficult in the season, it's not as hard. I think last year's team, we didn't really handle hard well. And I mentioned that with having so many kids that came from the Sun Belt, they've never had to play this many Power 5 schools consecutively. Well, now I have 6 returners, right? I have 1 kid that transferred in conference. So that's 7 kids who kind of understand. That's half of my team that understands the grind at an HBCU. And so now the new kids are hearing firsthand, no, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like this, as opposed to last year with only 4 returners. Their voices weren't as loud as the kids this year's are because they've experienced it. And so now all of my new kids are like, okay, tell me what it's like. Tell me what it's like when we go down and we play Southern. Tell me what it's like when we go to Jackson and play them. Tell me what it's like to be in the conference tournament in Atlanta. You know, and so just having that experience, that depth, that experience is going to help us win games. And so just trying to get the kids mentally prepared for the physical tack that it's going to take on their bodies, trying to play that many games on the road. So
obviously, at the beginning of your career, you know, this isn't your first trip to
North Louisiana. Yeah.
You know, you had a trip on XA4,
yeah.
Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
Under head coach, you know, at that time, Teresa Witherspoon, Hall of Famer, obviously, you know, was the former coach for the Chicago Sky, you know, in Unrivaled, has, you know, made a career, but
she was with the New Orleans Pelicans. Let's not, yeah, she's big time. Yeah, she's big time.
Absolutely. How was that experience, you know, being able to learn from her, and, you know, how did that help you watching her, being under her to get to this point now?
I think we just lovingly, we call her Spoon. I think Spoon taught me how to be a grinder. I think the biggest thing that she does, she's always gonna grind. Like, she knows one thing, and that's go hard. You know, coming from a little town in Texas, Pineland, Texas, shout out to Pineland, Texas, and just being a kid with a dream. And I think she showed me and she told me what it takes in order to be successful, and you have to work your way through the struggles. And I think just learning from her and watching her grind and still just push through, and even when people didn't think you could do it, she found a way to get it done. You know, being one of the first women to even step into the world of the NBA. She wasn't the first, but she was one of the first to then be an assistant coach. Now you look at what they've been able to do at that level. Now Dawn Staley may have a chance to go and be a head coach in the NBA. And so I feel like she showed me the way to break down doors for people that are coming behind me. None of us got here on our own. Somebody pulled us up with them. And so I think Spoon showed me what it looks like to work hard, to grind harder, and to help somebody else along the way. And so, man, I'm forever grateful and thankful for the time that I spent. Although it was just 1 year, it was very beneficial to my career. I can call her, pick up the phone and call her right now, and she's gonna answer, you know, and give me all the advice and encouragement that she can. So, you know, shout out to Spoon.
Obviously, you know, you spent 10 years at Troy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, built multiple championships, make, you know, 6 championships, a few tournament appearances.
Mm-hmm.
What was kind of the phone call, the decision like to say, you know, getting it from Dr. Scott to say, hey, I know you've never done this before, I know you've never been a head coach before, but I need you at Grambling State, I need you to turn this program around. What was it like, you know, leaving Troy and coming here?
Yeah, Troy was home. I was there for 10. So when I took the job at Troy, I left Louisiana Tech and went to Troy. And Coach Rigby and I had coached against each other. She was at Pensacola State and I was at Trinity Valley. And she said, my dad always told me, if you can't beat them, join them, because my team won a national championship. And her team ended up finishing second or something like, I don't even remember, but we won, right? I know that. Undefeated, 36-0, shout out to TVCC. But she was very clear that she wanted me to come in and help her kind of change the dynamic, because the expectation at Troy at the time was so low for women's basketball. And she said, I'm gonna give you free range, do your thing. And so I think she allowed me to be a head coach of what I was in charge of, well before Dr. Scott even gave me that call. And so I was confident, I was ready, I just didn't know where I would be. And my children were born in Troy. You know, my children were born in Alabama. Say that 3 times, Lord. Their birthday is today. Happy birthday, girls. But when Dr. Scott called me, it was an easy decision because I had already made peace with God is going to put me exactly where I'm supposed to be with the people that I'm supposed to be with. The fact that I had a previous relationship with him, being as though we went to the same high school. When he called me, he said, Courtney Simmons, you ready to be a head coach? And I just laughed. He was like, why you laughing? I said, because I literally had a conversation with my grandmother yesterday, and I said, the next AD that calls me that has enough guts to take a chance on a first-time, first-year head coach, I don't care where it is, I'm going. But I would love it to be close to home. And then the next day, 24 hours later, he calls me. And so I tell my kids all the time, my players, that the mouth is a powerful tool. You can speak things in and out of existence. And I spoke myself into Grambling State University. And at my press conference, somebody asked me why Grambling, and I said, why not Grambling? Grambling chose me long before I chose it, right? I was getting familiar with the area when I worked at La Tech for a year. My cousin played football here at Grambling. When I went on the interview for the head job at Southern University, Dr. Scott was the assistant AD at Southern University, and he walks me out after the interview and he said, man, you killed that, but I hope you don't get the job. And I'm like clutching my pearls. I'm like, wait, I can hear you. He was like, I know. He said, because one day I'm going to be an AD, and if you get the job here, they never going to let you go. But if you stay where you are and I get the AD job, I'm coming to get you. And even if you're not at Troy, wherever you are, I'm coming to get you, because you're ready right now, but the timing is just not right. He was like, you killed it, but the timing is just not right. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I didn't get the job, and I didn't get that job because I was supposed to be right here working for him. And so it's been great. He's been a good leader for me. The fact that he is a basketball guy, it does help because he understands kind of, you know, the landscape of how we're moving and some of the things that we need. And so I'm thankful for his leadership. He's given me an opportunity when a lot of other ADs told me that I didn't have experience. And how am I going to get experience when nobody ever gives me a chance? Dawn Stella didn't have experience either, but somebody gave her a chance, and now she's a 3-time national champion. And so sometimes we just need somebody to believe in us enough to give us a chance, and Dr. Scott was my person. So I'm forever grateful for him, and it doesn't matter where I am in my life, I'm going to always give him the respect that he's due because he gave me a chance and let me scoot 6 inches over to the right to now be the head coach of the Grambling State University women's basketball team. So.
You know, obviously, he gave you that chance, you know, playing at the D1 level, you know, would be possible had you got into coaching. And to be honest about myself, you know, I tried to go with coaching after college. It didn't work out too well. You know, I gave it up real quick and see where that got me now.
Yeah.
But what was it for you to know, like, after you were done playing, you know, that you wanted to go into coaching?
Yeah. I knew in the 6th grade that I wanted to be a coach. I got invited to Adidas camp. And I was going into my 6th grade year, and we were in the gym, and you know we were just warming up, getting ready to play, and I saw these people sitting along the sideline, and so I asked the coach that was coaching our group at the Adidas camp, and I was like, who are all those people? Because I knew I was talented, I just didn't know at the time how good I really was. You know, I'm 12, 13, I just want to play basketball, right? And they were like, those are college coaches, and I was like, college coaches? And they were like, yeah, those are college coaches for different basketball teams. Like, they're here to recruit y'all. And I was like, so they do this for a living? And he was like, yeah, they get paid to sit in the gym all day and watch basketball. I said, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And he was like, okay, little 12-year-old girl, go play, right? And so when we got done and we got in the car and we're heading back home, I told my grandmother, I said, I want to be a college coach. And she was like, where does this come from? I said, those people just sit in the gym all day and watch basketball, and somebody pays them to do that. Something that I would do for free, somebody's paying them to do it. And she was like, well, position yourself to be a college coach. And I never lost sight of that. And going into my senior year, Jeff Walls was my head coach at Louisville, and he was like, you know, what do you want to do after the year? You know, we can get you contracts to go play here. I was like, I want to be a coach. And he was like, girl, you can still play. Like, you ought to go. Just try to play for a year or two just to say you did. And I was like, no, I want to be a coach. I want to be the coach that I didn't have. He was like, wait, what? And I was like, I want to get into coaching. And so he signed me up for the So You Want to Be a Coach program. And when all of my friends that were in the program were going to all the parties and stuff, my grandmother made me 200, I'll never forget this, she made me 250 business cards on Shutterfly. I don't even know if people still use Shutterfly, but she made me 250 business cards. And she said, don't come home with a single card, because when you get done and you graduate from Louisville, you can't come here. And I was like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, you can't come home. And I was so mad that she told me that, but I now know what she was saying, like, put yourself in a position, you can always come home, but put yourself in a position that you don't have to come home unless you want to. I stood at the host hotel. I tell young coaches this all the time. I stood at the host hotel, and I passed out all 250 of those business cards. Gino Oriema, Pat Summit, Muppet McGraw. I didn't care who it was. I'm passing out these business cards because my grandmother told me, don't come home with a single one. And I get down to my last card. The elevator doors open, and out walks Errol Rogers, who at the time was the head coach for the Cajuns down at UL Lafayette. And he says, Courtney Simmons, what you doing standing at the elevator, girl? I said, I had to wait for you so I can give you my business card. And so we embraced, and we're just talking, and he was like, you know, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm in the So You Want to Be a Coach program, but Coach, I need a job. And I said, man, just gave you my last business card. And he was like, wait, Shutterfly, who made these for you? I said, my grandma. So I'm telling him the whole story, and we're laughing. And he was like, man, God works in mysterious ways. He's like, I have an opening on my staff. And I'm like, for real? He said, yes. He said, I have an opening on my staff, and if you're serious, I'm gonna hire you. And I'm like, I'm so serious. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now I'm about to be 45, 50 minutes away from home. This is an ideal situation. And so 3 days later, he called me, he offered me the job, and I started a month later, and that's how I got my first job. People always ask, how you get into coaching? That's how I got my first job. Being persistent, having a grandmother that made me business cards on Shutterfly, forcing me to step out of my comfort zone to go there for business and not for pleasure. And the So You Want to Be a Coach program was inspiration to me. I met a lot of good coaches, met a lot of good friends that I still keep in touch with now, but I left there with a job. And so, you know, that's my story. That's how I got into coaching. And, you know, I hit the ground running. My first year at UL, I was the third assistant. My second year, I was the first assistant. You know, and that just shows, you know, Coach Rogers had enough faith in me to just kind of let me go and let me do my thing. My first day, I was like, okay, what you want me to do? He was like, figure it out. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. He was like, figure it out. The best thing that I could do for you was not tell you how to do anything and force you to figure it out on your own. And that's why I get so frustrated when my players come and be like, Coach Simmons, I don't know how to figure it out, baby. Because what if Coach Simmons is gone? You're going to have to figure it out. What if mom and dad are gone? You got to figure it out. And so Coach Rogers forced me to grow up really, really quick. But I hadn't looked back since. And so, you know, I've had a lot of good people in my coaching journey that have really helped me become the person that I am today. So.
You know, obviously you never lack confidence, you know, with what you want to get.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously one of the middle recruiters in college, college women's basketball, you know, where did that come from? How do you, you know, develop that knack for being able to pull players, pull coaches even, being able to recruit with the best of the best?
I don't know. I think confidence comes from within. I've never lacked that personally. But my biggest thing is I'm not afraid for people to tell me no. I think a lot of people are so scared to get a no. I don't care. There's two things that you can tell me. You're either going to say yes or you're going to say no. And if you say no, then I didn't have it anyway. But oh, what if you say yes, right? Now I'm cooking with grease, right? And so that's kind of my mindset going into hiring a staff, recruiting a kid, even asking people for donations. You know, I'll reach out and ask somebody, you mind, you know, sponsoring my team to, I don't know, get whatever, t-shirts, I don't know, whatever. And if they say no, well, we didn't have the t-shirts anyway. But if they say yes, we all got brand new t-shirts, right? We don't need to because it's sponsored by Adidas. I just use it as an example. But yeah, I'm just not afraid of no's, right? And even coming into Grambling, you know, some people around me are afraid to be head coaches because what if they're not successful? But I look at that on the other side, the glass is half full. What if I am successful? I'm not afraid of failing because I know that I'm going to work hard enough that I'm going to succeed. And sometimes I'm going to fall short, but sometimes I'm going to overachieve, right? And so, I don't know, I've just always been like this. I've always been confident in myself. I try to always pour into others so that they're confident in themselves as well. I'm not perfect. I get it wrong a whole lot, but that's why we ask for grace in this program. We ask for progress, not perfection. And so, all the no's, with all the no's I've ever had in my life, all I needed was that one yes. And Dr. Scott gave it to me, and now I'm just gonna try to get as many yes through all the no's as I possibly can and just keep this train rolling.
Obviously, I always wanted this question, you know, getting into that, you know, just your coaching just in general, you know, your mom is still on and off the court, you know. I always wondered, does it ever help or aid in one side pour into the other as far as, you know, does coaching ever become a better mother, or, you know, being a mother help you be a better coach, given you have to, you know, chase around 14, 15 kids and then go home to your two? Does it ever pour into the other?
Well, I'm real sleepy. I'll say that. I hadn't slept in 4 years. But I think 4 years ago today, I became a good coach. Before I became a mom, there was only one way to do things, and that was my way. I think when you have children and you see things through their eyes, you see things a lot different. You know, I don't know that I had much compassion before I became a mom, because I was just so stuck in, this is how it has to be. In order to be good, you got to be like this. And that is just, that's not the case. These kids are like the makeup of children and young adults nowadays are changing. And so if you don't change with the times, you're going to get left behind. But my children are going to be under someone else's care one day. And I believe in karma, good and bad, and I want to put as much good karma in the atmosphere as I possibly can in hopes that it's returned to my children. I always want them to be better than I was. And I think now being a mom has taught me how to have a lot more patience with understanding that, you know, 2 + 2 is 4, but so is 3 + 1, right? There's more than one way to do things. There's more than one way to get to your destination. And so taking into consideration that I am responsible for other people's children, not just inside the 4 lines, but outside the 4 lines as well, has kind of helped me navigate through this mental health epidemic, just learning how to lead with love, right? My 3 pillars are serve, lead, and educate. But in order to be a good servant leader, you got to be a good listener. And so I try to be as diligent, as intentional as I possibly can to get to know them as people first, right? And now, you know, I don't know, I feel like this summer I have forced myself to step outside of my comfort zone and get to know my team as people more than just, all right, let's run, let's jump, let's lift these weights. Like, no, let's talk. Like, tell me what your icks are. Like, cause these are I'm gonna always tell them what I want, what I need, what I'm demanding. But oftentimes as coaches, we get so caught up in the hustle and the bustle of it all, we stop listening. Because as a good leader, you also got to be a good follower sometimes as well. You know, some days I might not have 100%, and I might need that one player at the end of my bench to fill my cup up, right? And so I think that's not going to happen if you don't have relationships with them. But all while holding them accountable, because I do hold them accountable now. But I also lead with love, and so, you know, like I said, I'm not perfect. I don't proclaim to be, but I try to be the best version of myself every single day. And not only that, I want them to be good people, because my today, my babies are 4. My 4-year-olds are watching everything that they do. And for instance, we were at the office the other day, and the girls were drawing with the Expo marker. Shout out to Expo, with an Expo marker, and then they started drawing on their arms. Then they started drawing on their legs, and I'm like, why would y'all start? And I'm like, the whole doggone team has tattoos. So, because they're mimicking what they see. And so, just being mindful that I want good people in my program, because my children are at that age now where they're really impressionable and they're watching everything that they do. So watching our mouths, because one day, I don't know if I can say this, one day I said, "What the hell?" And then I go and pick the girls up from school and they were like, Miss Simmons, Cortland was saying, "What the hell?" today. And I'm like, "I'm so sorry. That's my fault." It's just trying to be mindful of the things that come out of my mouth, because if it affects my children, I know the things that come out of my mouth affect my players as well. And so it really just goes hand in hand. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah. Finish up with this one. Obviously, third year, 23 wins first year, 15 wins second year. What can people expect in the third year of Courtney Simmons era?
And this year, we not that it's been any different than what we've done in the past, but I think we're being very intentional on how to put ourselves in a position to win 20 games again, 20-plus games again, and be in the championship game. I'm not going to say we're going to win the championship game, but our mission and our goal is to just give ourselves a chance to win. But in order to do that, you got to be in the fight, right? We got some dogs. Now we need the dogs in the fight. And so I'm hopeful. I'm intentional, and I'm diligent about us being in the championship game. We want to play on Saturday this year. I don't care who we play. I just want to be in the championship game this year, in the SWAC tournament, and try to compete and represent the G in the NCAA tournament. And that is kind of what my expectations are. That is what we're striving for. These kids are going to play hard. They're going to play together, and we're going to have fun doing it. It's not just about basketball. We're going to have a good time. We want to get to know our alumni. I want to surround them around people that have like-minded backgrounds as them, and so they can see that it is possible to be something other than just a basketball player. And so we're just trying to build champions in life, man. That's what they can expect. My kids to be in the community, to give back, to do as much as we can to make sure that we leave a mark in Grambling. Not just in the Ruston area, but in Grambling as well, because these are the people that love us. And so, stay tuned.
Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thank you.
Yep.